Hello and welcome to our podcast, Tales from the CyberLab. My name's Adam Myers and I'm the Sales Director here at CyberLab, and I'll be your host for today. Joining me today is Tom Unsworth, who is an ethical hacker here at CyberLab. Tom, can you just explain a little bit about your role and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I'm a security consultant at CyberLab, and my job is to perform penetration testing against a range of different technologies.
Pretty cool. And he's even brought his own laptop here just to sort of make sure he's putting us under pressure and, spooking us a little bit. Other guests don't bring laptops, so let's see what we get into. But hopefully some good ideas that you've got around sort of some of the questions we're going to pose to you. So the first question, Tom, can you walk us through what your day-to-day looks like as a security consultant here at CyberLab?
Yeah, so I think the best way to sort of explain what we do is to give you a little run through of like what a typical project would look like, because the days vary slightly. So when we start an engagement, we get given a scope that we need to read, understand, and essentially that's, for people who don't know, the rules of what we're allowed to do, what we're allowed to access, and essentially allows us to hack applications without deviating from that and breaking the Computer Misuse Act. So it's what we got permission to do. So once we've read and understood that, we then would check our access to the environment and then let the client know, right, we're starting. Then the fun part starts where we start hacking. We will look for vulnerabilities and then we will risk rate them. This sort of goes from informational, which is something that we want the client to know about but doesn't pose any threat, all the way up from low, medium, high, and then critical.
Yeah.
And your highs and criticals are really important to get fixed sort of in a timely manner. You would want them fixed ASAP.
Do you kind of do them straight away? So like you spot, I don't know, a big red flag and it says, right, this is a serious potential risk or vulnerability. Are you communicating to the client there and then to say, look, jump on this now mid pen test to maybe stop this from getting worse?
Typically if we find a high rated vulnerability or a critical, we will let the client know immediately. And then we normally like to hear like confirmation back that they've received it if we send an email. We don't want that to get lost. So if we don't hear back saying, yep, we've got that, thanks for letting us know, we'll go further and call up if we've got that sort of information to contact them.
And that's quite unique, I think, in what we offer as a pen testing service, is it? Because you're remediating whilst on the job as such, so it's stopping it at source, but also you're not then having to go and do that as an action afterwards, which might cost you more time or out your budget. So I think that's quite good that you offer that there and then, don't you? And the communication between the test team, yourself, and the customers, quite good at that stage to get things action.
Yeah, typically we try and keep the environment as unchanged as possible. So when we find information's up to sort of medium, we try to keep those from being remediated while we're testing, because we don't want new vulnerabilities to be introduced when we've tested a part of an application, for example. We won't go back and test it necessarily. So unless it's, high or critical, and then it's really important to do that. And then, so once we've done our, found our vulnerabilities, we then write up a report, which is arguably the most important part of the job, because that's the deliverable that the client gets. Then once we've sent that over, we'll have a wash-up call with the client. If there's any questions, we can provide clarity, essentially.
So typically, would you maybe do a pen test after major project change, or maybe you've introduced a new technology into the business? Is that when you would maybe recommend that customers should take out a pen test for you guys?
Yeah, typically it's if they've made a new application or they've made some changes to an already existing application. They want reassurance that they've they've followed the best practices and not got vulnerabilities that could be exploited.
Because it's a second set of eyes, isn't it, on you might deliver a project yourself internally, and then it's kind of getting people like yourself to come in and, I guess, say, yes, rubber stamp it, everything's good from a compliance perspective, but also, there's no back doors into maybe, creating a vulnerability yourself by delivering that project.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a big part of compliance, and also I think just peace of mind that you believe your app is in the best security posture
Yeah.
is very important.
Nice. And then just as well as part of your role, so what I see from working on the board here and all the exams you have to do and everything, and I guess you're governed heavily by Crescent Check as well. There's a lot that kind of you need to undertake to become an ethical hacker or a pen tester, isn't there? So you'll be constantly doing exams to show that you're and demonstrating a credible person that has access to what it can be quite sensitive information.
Yeah, we do. There's a lot of certifications in the cyber industry. I think it's easy to get caught in sort of the thought process of like which ones do I need. The ones that we really like at CyberLab are the team leader and team member. For the member, it's a mixture of web and infrastructure testing, and then for the team leader, it's more specialized into either web or infrastructure. But we also want have a really talented pen test team here. A lot of the guys go above and beyond that into red teaming certifications.
We'll cover that in a second because that's quite an interesting part. But I think just for our audience, if anyone is looking to become a pen tester, I do really, when I go and do maybe some talks, a lot of people get quite excited about that as a career path. So feel free to reach out to myself and Tom, and we can help you on that journey if you're looking to sort of see how you can kind of get into ethical hacking and penetration testing. Brilliant. Okay, so topic number 2. So what are some of the most common vulnerabilities you're seeing in web applications today?
Yeah. So for this question, I want to talk about the OWASP top 10. So this is essentially a project that aims to categorize the top 10 most common vulnerabilities in different types of applications. So we have separate lists for API, web applications, mobile applications, and they've recently brought out a LLM.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, sort of category. So the very common ones that we see in pretty much every engagement we do is sort of vulnerable third-party components, because these are really hard to keep up to date with if you've got a wide range of technologies on your apps.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that something that AI is kind of introduced to us, I guess, as we obviously AI is hot topic at the moment, but is that something that you're now seeing as evolving, I guess, within?
Yeah, so for me personally, I would say I've seen the biggest shift so far has been towards the cloud and the technologies that you can use there. In terms of AI, the new OWASP like top 10 for LLMs sort of listing the different vulnerabilities. I think the number 1 is prompt injection.
Yeah.
I've not seen too much of that yet, but I really enjoy AI. I think we all do. And so I think that would be really interesting to get some more applications that are implementing it as that becomes more widely available, which we know is happening.
Yeah. I guess the shift to the cloud probably 5 or 10 years ago, everyone kind of made that kind of created its whole, like a new ecosystem within itself, didn't it? And we were kind of having to test things in a slightly different method. I can kind of foresee in the next 5 years, especially, the adoption of AI and the vulnerabilities that will pose, and things even from a data privacy perspective and what that Copilot might have access to now and sensitive company information. There's a lot of maybe testing that could maybe go down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So the shift we saw with cloud, we're going to have a similar adaptation with LLMs probably.
Amazing. Yeah. Yep. Brilliant. Some hot topics there for us to review. I think getting good insider information here, which is great. So 3rd question, can you share a real life example of vulnerabilities that you've discovered and how it was resolved?
Yeah. So this is a vulnerability that I really sort of jumped out my seat when I found.
This is why the laptop's here, I feel like, isn't it? Yeah.
So this is a vulnerability. It's called request smuggling. And
nice. Catchy name.
Yeah, essentially, what you're trying to do when you perform a request smuggling attack is confuse either a front-end server or a back-end server about how long the body of a request is. So if I can confuse the server to think that my request has ended, but I've actually got a little bit extra on the end because of the way that the servers interact with each other.
Yeah.
I can trick potentially the back-end server into thinking the bottom of my request is the top of the next person's request.
Yeah. Okay.
And that essentially allows you to perform actions on behalf of another user. And the thing I really found amazing about the vulnerability, that when I found it was completely unauthenticated. So anyone going to that website, it was a publicly facing website, could access it
Wow.
and then affect other users. What I did think was really good about the way that we communicated this issue with the client was, initially on the application I was testing, there was no severe impact from this vulnerability. And so it was coming out at probably a medium. And I still decided to contact the client about it because even though it's not a high or a critical, I thought that it had the potential to be a high or a critical if we chained it with another vulnerability. So what we ended up doing was, I asked them if I could test it in the authentication part of the application, but this was out of scope. That's why I asked. And they said, well, this is our production authentication application, so we don't want you to mess with that, but we'll spin up a staging environment for you to test it in. So about 45 minutes later, they said, please, can you go test it on this application? And I guess similar developers are going to use the same technologies because that's what they're good at using. And it was also vulnerable. And in that, so the way that this worked was, you would authenticate on one application, then you'd be redirected to the other application that I was tested. So what I could do was redirect to a different website that wasn't their application. So essentially now, chaining these two vulnerabilities together, as an unauthenticated user, I could send to the server like a normal request, but add this part to the other request, which then redirected them to a malicious site. And so that bumped the severity up massively. We let them know about it, and they're really grateful that we've been able to demonstrate it in visual way. I've recorded a video of myself attacking myself, and then that led to quite a good change on their end. So they were in the process of migrating away from that authentication endpoint, and they bumped that to the top of their queue. And so they remediated the issue essentially by just not using it and moving to a different authentication.
What an answer. Yeah, that is, for the techies out there, I'm sure you will love that. So thank you, Tom. That's a brilliant, good. I think you've shone a light a little bit on the potential paths that you kind of go down on a day-to-day. So brilliant there, thank you. Brilliant. So I guess, Tom, how can a company get the most out of their pen test?
Yeah, the first thing that I would say that you want to nail when getting a pen test is having the access set up and ready to go for the start. Even a couple of days prior doesn't hurt in case you run into issues. It just means you don't eat into any of your testing time. And then another recommendation would be, ideally don't test in prod, some kind of pre-production environment. It gives the tester the freedom to test without the potential to damage real customer data, which when it comes to our job, that's the worst thing that you can do. Pre-production environment that isn't, connected to production.
And I guess at the start of a pen test, what I see often is like some customers are kind of on the Monday when it starts, it seems like they're then kind of actioning that and getting ahead with their admin and getting things sorted. But I really like what you're saying there. If they would just maybe do that the back end of the week before, it just means in that testing window, you're getting the full week of people like yourself, hands on keyboard type thing, as opposed to kind of trying to prepare then in that time that's been ate up by,
Yeah, exactly. And if you run into an issue halfway through the week, it's not quite as bad because we can catch up on our reporting. Whereas if it's on the Monday, we've got nothing to write up at that point. So you're just eating into your testing time.
And just something on that, because what I see is that often it's quite a difficult window to always get the test window when you want it as a customer as well. So we see from a sales perspective and an account management perspective is maybe purchasing in bulk days. That works really well. So we can maybe set testing windows for you as a client to say, the third week of the month will be a 5-day testing window for this customer. And for them, they just then know that it's kind of pre-booked in, and we can kind of just schedule that throughout the year, which is, keeping you in sort of a rhythm and a sequence. And then you guys are kind of prepared for that environment as well. So just something to factor in as opposed to trying to rush late on to get something through. I think just prepare with those bulk days does really help customers.
Yeah, definitely. Helps us schedule it in early, and you know the exact date that you've got it. Good. So another point that I think is worth mentioning is if your application's quite complicated, I think it's really good to demonstrate how to use it to the
Yes.
tester.
Yeah.
Because essentially, if we're only looking at it sometimes even just for a few days, if it's complicated, we're trying to understand how it works then and how it interacts with
Yes.
other parts of the application. And it's difficult to do that while also trying to essentially break it. So if we understand how it works from a short demo, it can save us a lot of time in the scheme of things.
So we do that as sort of with a pre-scoping call, don't we, here at CyberLab, so that we'll kind of get a walkthrough of the application, because a lot of these are bespoke applications as well that you probably, at times maybe never seen before, but
Yeah.
that also brings a whole, world of vulnerabilities as well, potentially, because, it might have been built in-house, for example, and, you're getting used to it, but also it might have a lot of exposure that they're not aware of, I guess, as well.
Yeah. I would say the majority of the applications we test are sort of built in-house. Yeah.
We could also do things like tabletop exercise as well, which is quite good, where we can maybe do some of those social engineering campaigns through phishing simulation and trials. I think that always goes down pretty well with some of our key customers. Just trying to stay ahead of the threat curve, I guess. It's evolving, it's constantly changing. So with threats, I guess, evolving so quickly, how do you and your team stay ahead? So how do you kind of know what's coming, and how do you prepare for the latest sort of threats?
Yeah. So as I was mentioned earlier, we're encouraged to take those professional titles, team leader, team member. A lot of the team are really interested in red teaming, so they've gone and got red team qualifications. And then essentially, pen testing it involves being quite good at a large range of technologies and understanding how they work, how to exploit them. And I think initially when you get into pen testing, there's a massive time investment that you need to put in to understand how to attack these applications. So what we are quite lucky to have at CyberLab is quite a big team.
Yeah.
And so what that allows us to do is have so web specialists that they go down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
on web app testing. Same for mobile, same for thick client, Active Directory. And so it means that I don't have to stay up to date on, for example,
Yes, yeah.
Active Directory, because that job's going to be given to one of my colleagues, and I'll focus in on the mobile applications. And so
So it's specialisms kind of within the team as well, that you
Yeah,
kind of you'll work together as sort of a part of a wider team to kind of like keep, ahead of the curve in terms of what could be coming down the line. Yeah.
yeah.
I'd love to know
No
the
one can be good at
the
everything,
team's
yes.
chat must be really interesting when it's like, I found something new, this is happening. It must be quite an interesting
Yeah.
way of like,
So
research and discovery.
Yeah, something that's just came out last night is James Kettle's call for the end of HTTP 1. So he's just shared his latest research on request smuggling. As you can tell, I'm quite interested in that type of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and why he thinks that we need to get rid of HTTP 1. So that's something I just shared with the guys earlier.
Yeah, brilliant. Nice. Very, very interesting. And equally, some of our audience may have been to Secure Tour. They might have seen the live hack, for example. People like Tom and Alex, you join us at Secure Tour. You were in Manchester, weren't you? So if anybody does want to come to any of our events, I think it's brilliant to meet you in person, kind of get a grasp of like what you're seeing. And equally, if any customers would like to join a call, we can pull in Tom, Alex, other people to support you with any questions that you might have as well. So feel free to use this knowledge, but been really interesting. Brilliant. I guess if I was to wrap things up and say, what is one takeaway you could say for our audience from this podcast that they should be looking at in terms of pen testing and maybe, down the line?
Yeah. So the cliche answer here is to say, invest in training your people. Because whenever we look at the news, it's always they got in through attacking your people. But I don't want to give you that answer. So what I was going to say is, with using third-party services, you open yourself up to vulnerabilities that you might not even be aware of. I think it's becoming quite well known that your third parties are really important, that they're secure. If I just was to mention the research that I was talking about earlier from James Kettle, they found a vulnerability in a content delivery network that affected 25 million websites. And essentially all those customers for a long time were unaware that they were vulnerable until the security researchers found this vulnerability. So I think if you can avoid, third parties and overcomplicating your applications, I think that's a great place to be.
Keep things simple.
If you can.
Yeah, and train your people. So we offer efficient simulation through our CyberLab control platform, which I think is brilliant. Again, the life hack that we perform, if anyone wants us to come in and do that with their people, that'd be great. But it probably, sometimes it's like training fatigue, isn't it? We all maybe have introduced cybersecurity training, but it's kind of this thing we have to do once a month, and it can become a little bit of a, oh, I've just got to tick this box, where really the human element is huge, isn't it, in terms of stopping, potentially these attacks unfolding. So
yeah,
really good. So that concludes this episode of Tales from the CyberLab. Join us next time. Until then, stay secure.